On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we take a little drive over to the Paramount Fine Food Center in Mississauga and talk all about Raptors 905. Of course, Gradey Dick is down there right now. Had himself a bit of a bounce back game last night, if 5 of 21 counts as a bounce back. We'll also talk about the general state of Raptors 905 and the pipeline, the two-way guys. It's all coming up with Big V, Vivek Jacob, Mississauga's finest. Coming up, let's get to it.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, November the 28th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that don't work so good at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, come hang out in the Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join, and it's a great little community we got building around the show. You can keep tabs in the Locked On Raptors Fantasy League if you're into that. There's plenty of video game talk in there, sports collectibles, cards, etc., etc. There's a little flavor for everybody in the Locked On Raptors Discord. So come and hang out. We'd love to see you join our little family of sickos. Also, a reminder, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts, on all the audio apps, and on YouTube, of course, in video form each and every day. You can hit the little notification bell when you subscribe on YouTube and get a heads up every single time an episode's about to premiere, so you never miss me and my guests, mostly my guests. You can miss me, it's fine. But anyway, let's get to it. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we will get started by bringing in today's guests. As I mentioned, I don't hope I didn't accidentally, do like stolen valor or fake claim of Mississauga's finest. You're a Mississauga man's, right?
Yes,
Vivek Jacob is here. What's up?
I was very happy to hear that.
Excellent. I was glad. I almost had Lizette Shawarma as Mississauga's finest, but I figured I could give it to a person instead of a restaurant.
Love it.
Shout out Lizette. What, Dixie and oh god.
Toronto.
Yeah, that's it. Oh man. See, you know the spots. Mississauga's finest knows the spots. All right. Big V. We're talking Mississauga because we're talking Raptors 905 today. You were at the game last night against the Capital City Go-Go, Hamidou Diallo's Capital City Go-Go, as Raptors 905 fell to 0-8 on the season. It's not been a banner start for Eric Khoury and Raptors 905. There have been injuries. There's been all sorts of stuff. But of course, we should start by talking about Gradey Dick, Big V, because Gradey Dick is down there with Raptors 905 right now, assigned over the weekend. One of the bigger news items from the weekend we didn't really cover on yesterday's show, but it's a thing. I guess we'll start here. What was your reaction to Gradey Dick getting the assignment for Raptors 905? It seems like, he was kind of on the way out of the rotation for Darko Rajakovic. Do you think it was a good call to send him to the 905? Would you rather have seen him kind of work through his issues at the NBA level? How are you feeling about Gradey Dick getting the assignment down to Mississauga?
I felt good about it. I thought it was something that worked out well with the timing where you're able to get him 2 home games for the 905 with plenty of reps, plenty of minutes, as opposed to, a trip to Cleveland where maybe he doesn't really get to play that much, right? And so I think the opportunity to play was big. We'll see if he ends up sticking around for the 905 game on Friday as well. That'll be at Scotiabank Arena. So I think it's important for him to get this run, especially with the way he's been struggling with his shot. And, just kind of fuel the confidence, maybe, figure some things out at still, a high professional level, and that he can bring back. And that's what, especially, if I were to look at the first game he had and even the first half of this second game, I thought he was a bit too passive. I thought that he was almost trying to fit in way too much. And I thought that second half of the second game was very much, hey, if I'm going down, I'm going to go down swinging. And he was trying to make things happen defensively, really attacked the glass. Offensively, was really looking for his shot, was really looking to attack off the bounce. And it was very much like, hey, I'm supposed to be the best guy on the floor here. Let me play like it, or at least try to play like it. And so even though he finished the night 5 for 21. I do like the intent that he showed. Obviously got to the line a bunch. Like even with the free throws, they're almost like a little bit misleading because in the G League you have the make one for 2 points.
Sure.
And so he actually got to the line a bit more than even the 7 for 7 suggests. So that shows, the attacking intent that he had. And I think, there's little teachable moments within this as well. So, for example, I spoke to Eric Khoury after the game about, what kind of changed in that second half. And Eric Khoury was talking about how at halftime, they kind of went over how Hamidou Diallo was defending him and how, he could make some adjustments to that and, kind of be an off-ball screener and then, kind of move around, kind of get involved on ball and then relocate. And so those are little things that you're learning in game, in moments that maybe, you wouldn't even get the reps at the NBA level to learn from against someone who has played at the NBA level in Hamidou Diallo and at times has proven pretty capable. So I think from that standpoint, it was very important for him to get this run. I know I went on for quite a while there.
No, man. I mean, you were there. You give me the expert look. I'm cool with that. Yeah. Ultimately, look, I have been pretty kind of on the side of I'd rather just see Gradey Dick get NBA reps and kind of learn the speed of the game in the role that he's going to occupy in the NBA, which is as kind of like an off-ball fourth or fifth option who is just this awesome release valve. You can run stuff with him in dribble handoffs and all this type of stuff. But if he's not going to get the minutes, if he's not, warranting the minutes with his three-point shooting, which he certainly has not been, then the 905 makes more sense. Obviously, you'd rather have him getting into games as opposed to just getting DNP CDs every night. So no issues with him going down. Ultimately, too, I know there's a lot of concern about Gradey Dick. There's a lot of looking around and, Jordan Hawkins looks good. And, Keontae George looks good. Oh, my God. Did the Raptors screw up? Just like chill, man, I think is kind of like my general feeling on the whole Gradey Dick thing right now. He just turned 20 years old. He began the year as a teenager. And everyone knew there was going to be, I think, like a physical obstacle to climb for Gradey Dick to kind of get accustomed to the NBA physicality, the NBA speed. That's a thing Darko Rajakovic has talked about a lot. And I'm just like, if the thing that's not working for him is the thing that was the thing he got drafted for, I feel pretty all right about him figuring out. And you kind of talked about it there. Just like the very simple thing of, hey, halftime, I can kind of make some adjustments to how I'm approaching this game. Like that speaks to, I think, the thing that makes me feel very good about Gradey Dick, which is the dude knows how to play basketball. He understands the intricacies of the game at a very high level. It's obvious. It jumps off the page, even when he's not hitting his shots, the way he times his, forays for offensive rebounds, the way he moves off the ball and fills space, and just kind of understands the concept of gravity and floor geometry. Like, I'm going to bet on guys who know how to play basketball, even if things are a little bit rough out of the gate. Did you have any sort of other stray observations on Gradey Dick here? I think, we don't need to go down the rabbit hole of, could they've drafted somebody else? Like, no, this dude was like projected as a top 10 pick. He fell to 13, and he is exactly the type of player this team has been yearning for since the days of Jason freaking Capono. Like anyone who can just be a high level, catch and shoot marksman is going to be a huge asset on a team that employs Scotty Barnes as its best player going forward. There's every possibility that Gradey Dick kind of figures some things out. The shot starts to fall and he's part of the rotation by, mid-season, right? Like I think the need for shooting on this roster is so dire and so obvious most of the time that there will be opportunities for him to kind of get back in there. And we've seen he's had a couple of games where he's really popped, and the Gradey Dick effect has been like, oh, so this guy can do? Okay, let's go. Giddy up. I also am I rooting for him to get back in so we can start piling up threes made for our over-unders contest? Absolutely, I am. Which, by the way, I'm feeling very good about. I keep saying this. I'm going to jinx it, but I'm feeling all right now. We're going to come back.
Very happy for you to get your first win.
Yeah, no one else will be. Everyone will be like, it'll be like very patronizing, I'm sure. Oh, congrats, Sean. You did it. Great job. Anyway, I'm not mad about it at all. We're going to come back on the other side. We're going to get into the sort of bigger picture of the 905 and the reestablishing of the pipeline. The pipeline. Everyone's caring about the pipeline all the time. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sports book in all the land. And look, the weather is crappy. It's awful. It's cold. It's like snowing. There's wind chill. It's not pleasant out there right now. But as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And it's not just the NFL. I'm not a football fan. I don't really care about wagering on football, but I can go if I want to put a little money on a basketball game or some baseball or some NHL futures, whatever it might be. It's all available over there at FanDuel for you to go and peruse with that $150 in bonus bets you get with that winning money line bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and of the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, we continue on here. Big V, Vivek Jacob of Yahoo Sports, of Sportsnet, of Mississauga, of course, is here. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. As always, if you haven't yet, go check out my weekend recap of the games against the Cavs and the Bulls last night. We'll have a recap tomorrow of Raptors Nets. We'll have a recap the next day of Raptors Suns. It's a busy, busy week as the Raptors continue in their stretch of 8 games over 13 days. But let's keep it on the 905 train right now, Big V. So this has been a long-standing thing. I think really since the pandemic, the Tampa season really seemed to be sort of the fracture point of Raptors 905 humming along, just churning out players for the big club nonstop. And then the pandemic hits. This also coincides with the sort of post-championship tax coming due of not having a lot of draft picks and stuff to work with. And since then, it has felt like Raptors 905 has not exactly been the feeder to the big club that it used to be when the likes of Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell and even lesser guys like Malcolm Miller were getting some run and contributing in some way, shape, or form to the NBA club. I feel like Juan Hernandez is kind of like the guy that kind of ended the run of picking up dudes off the scrap heap and turning them into players. So I don't think it's quite as dire as it was back in the Tampa season, because nothing is. The world was hell. I mean, the world's still hell in different ways, but basketball-wise, the Raptors are a little bit more normal. They have the standard 905 setup. They're in Mississauga at Paramount Fine Food Center, all that stuff. And you would think that they could kind of
maybe it was the name change.
Maybe it was the name change. Damn you, Paramount Fine Foods, and your hard-to-say arena name. Disgusting. Anyway, sponsor the podcast if you want, Paramount Fine Foods. I would not complain. But it has been some time since we've seen that pipeline really churning out NBA-level talent. The two ways have been up and down. Obviously, Jeff Doughton Jr. Never really got a foothold with the Raptors. Jalen Harris, we saw that end prematurely, et cetera, et cetera. It's been a tough go here. Do you think they're making progress? They're obviously 0-8 to start this season. It doesn't look good record-wise, but I'm curious kind of your read on the state of the 905 to Toronto pipeline as it stands right now.
Yeah, it just looks pretty murky. I think, one of the concerns that the fan base probably has is when you think about the 905 big picture, you think of the Raptors seeming to have created this competitive advantage. And so, in other areas where, you wouldn't put them anywhere near the top of, free agency destinations, because obviously that has not played out that way. When you look at, obviously there's the Khoury trade, but in general, that's not been a huge method of success in terms of reeling in, talent. We look at Dennis Schroeder as now possibly, the best free agent signing in Raptors history. And so I think you had this competitive advantage through the 905 that was creating this roster depth that was huge for the team. And so now to have lost that, or looks like you've lost it, is really hurting the team. right?
Mhm.
And when we talk about the bench struggles and all of that, it's like, man, where has that gone? And so I think you look at the elements of success for the 905 in the past, it was really having a great point guard, whether it was Fred VanVleet, Lorenzo Brown,
Mhm.
those are the caliber of guys that were there. I'd even throw, I mean, John Jordan never made it up to the Raptors level, but when he was playing backup at that time, behind Fred VanVleet and whatnot, like that was pretty solid. You had Axel Tucan,
Mhm.
who had a cup of coffee with a few NBA teams. And so I think you had that caliber of talent. We'll have to see this team, with Markquis Nowell healthy, with Justice Winslow healthy, and see, some wins on the board. But obviously at 0-8, it looks pretty ugly.
Yeah, and look, like the record of the 905 team is not necessarily indicative of the development that's going on there, and they have been super injured. Markquis Nowell, I think, and I think he's played a handful of games, and he's kind of done the floor general point guard set dudes up type of thing. And I think there's a world in which Markquis Nowell is just like an absolutely perfect lead guard for the 905 to facilitate the development of other guys. I bet Gradey Dick would be kind of having an easier time of it, for example, if he was working with Markquis Nowell, who we know is like a wizard of passing and angles and everything, even though he is 5'5" or whatever the hell he is. It's a thing that they don't have right now, and that stinks. Like it's just hard to overcome that in the 905 in the G League, where point guard play is really, really essential to kind of getting everything on the same page. I also think like this is tough because yes, the Raptors have this grand history of turning 905 players into NBA players, and it's a thing they hang their hat on. I also think they kind of like the worst thing that ever happened to the sort of reputation of the 905 was having two once in a generation development stories. In the case of Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, go through the 905 at basically the same time. You're never going to match that. That was like unprecedented what the Raptors were able to pull off with those guys. And with Norm Powell also kind of in there around the same time, I guess a year prior to those guys really hitting. Like it's a hard thing to do. And I know like the best teams will find a way. The Miami Heat keep on turning up players out of nowhere and all this stuff. But I think the combination of the Raptors kind of setting themselves at like the peak, like they were at the top of Everest in the very early days of the 905's existence. And they also had like a competitive edge because they were one of the first teams to really understand what the 905 could do. Now everybody has a 905 has a G League team.
Point.
Everybody they're all competing for these same guys. And in any given year, you're going to get a handful of guys who go from the G League to regular contributing minutes in the NBA. It's, plenty of guys will be back end roster guys. Not very many are going to carve out regular roles with NBA teams that are, contributing to winning basketball. And the pool has just gotten so much wider and harder to kind of sift through because all these teams are after these guys. And I think you have to have a little bit of grace, I think, just for the sheer math of it all, that Raptors 905 no longer can take advantage of by simply not being there, like simply being there first, I guess is kind of the way I'd say this. So it's tough, right? Like you'd like to see them start to turn guys into NBA players, but it's also just like a thing that is a pretty low odds thing. We can get into some of the two-way guys and what guys have a shot here, but I'm also curious, 0-8, Eric Khoury's been the coach now. I think this is his third season running the show. Second. Yeah. It's a constantly kind of revolving thing. Guys come in and out. Jama was there before. Where are you at with sort of the state of the coaching on Raptors 905? There's only so much we can pull from just random drops into the G League. We don't watch what Eric Khoury's doing all the time, what his staff is doing all the time. We don't see them on the road interacting with players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It all kind of happens under the radar. But what's your sort of general feeling on the coaching setup? Do you feel like there's synergy between the 905 coaching setup and the Raptors coaches? Like this is all a very sort of nuanced thing, but what's your sort of read on that right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Raptors 905 have an ideal head coach right now in Eric Khoury. I mean, from what I've seen from him, he doesn't give me head coach vibes.
Sure.
And I think even when I look at a game like yesterday, your team is 0-7. And even he had so much intensity in the second half, and really, trying to yell out plays, trying to direct traffic on defense, or like all those types of things. And he was so quiet in the first half.
Right.
And that's kind of just his personality.
Sure.
And that's part of why I say I don't think he's a head coach quite yet anyway.
Mhm.
And that intensity should have been there right from the jump, right? Your team is 0-7. Like the first time I saw Eric Khoury as a head coach in person, the first thing that stood out to me was this is quite a few decibels lower than Jerry Stackhouse.
Or even like Jama, who's just like so
Yeah.
intensely positive all the time. Like he just
Yeah.
kind of commands the room, right?
Yeah. And I think,
Yeah.
Patrick Mutombo brought really good value
Mhm.
to the 905. And I think the way
That's who
that
was between Jama and Eric. That's right.
yes, exactly. And I think, he was someone who was really trying to instill in those guys, the value of, committing to principles, and being really, really disciplined. And he was pretty demanding.
Mhm.
And I think that is good at that level where you're pushing guys to say, hey, you want the job that some of these guys coming down here have, right? Like, for example, when the Capital City Go-Go are going up against Gradey Dick, you can bet Amadou Diallo is looking at him saying, you got my job. And so I think they're trying to that's what Patrick was really trying to instill in those guys. And he really invested in those guys. Like, one of the things Patrick told me was, there's a bunch of guys that he's worked with that he texts almost every day to this day. And that's the type of relationship he tries to build. I think that's generally not Eric Khoury's personality,
Hmm.
but I can also understand why, the Raptors front office saw this as an opportunity to just test him, right?
Sure.
Because he had done exceedingly well within the organization to this point. It's
Mhm.
obviously something that he wanted to try. And I think, maybe he's just learning that this is maybe not his cup of tea.
Look, man, that's the whole thing with head coaching, man. You don't really know how someone's going to do in the job until they do the job. It's sort of the unknowable, annoying thing about it all. Not to say Eric Khoury can't turn things around, but yeah, 0-8, you would assume that maybe some kind of change is on the horizon there as they try to, I guess, imprint the culture reset from top to bottom across the org. We're going to come back into the side, get into the two-way guys, Javon Freeman-Liberty, Markquis Nowell, Ron Harper Jr., Big Ron, and dig into whether or not those guys have a shot at contributing at the NBA level this season. Javon Freeman-Liberty, that was just a mush mouth way of saying it. 26 points last night on 9-17 back from injury. Someone I quite like watching play basketball. We'll talk Nowell, we'll talk Ron. It's all coming up in just a second here. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the single best place for you to go and play daily fantasy sports, because it's as it should be. It's not against some sort of shadow expert in a basement putting together a team with algorithms that you have no shot of competing with. No, it's you against the projections the way it should be. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players on a given entry, whether they will get more or less than their Prize Picks projection in a given stat. It's simply that easy. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play. Even if one of your players gets injured for football and basketball games, you have a player who gets injured in the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an insurance policy for injuries. That's incredible. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 with the code LockedOnNBA. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Okay, closing out the show here. Big V, Vivek Jacob, is along as we dive into the two-way guys on Raptors 905 and whether they got a shot to chip in at the NBA level this season. We know that the NBA team needs guard play. Pretty important. They have a couple of guys who are doing a decent job with it right now, but the fall off after that is severe. Let's start with Javon Freeman-Liberty, because he to me is the guy that I kind of have circled of, okay, if there is going to be a success story here, a guy who kind of chips in at the NBA level and can be a sort of positive piece for this year's Raptors team, it seems to me like Javon Freeman-Liberty kind of has the combination of skills that could allow that to happen for him. Again, 26 last night, 9 of 17, 2 of 5 from deep. And, we saw in the preseason, he's got a kind of a bit of like a slick passing game to him. He's got a little wiggle as like a downhill driver. The 3-point shooting is looking pretty promising. Where are you at with Javon Freeman-Liberty? Obviously, he's been injured quite a bit. He's only played a handful of games so far this year for the 905. But to me, he's kind of like the beacon of hope among 905 guys of outside of Gradey Dick, obviously, of kind of getting into the mix for the Raptors this season. Where are you at with JFL? You're muted.
Oh,
now you're unmuted. Go ahead.
I didn't do that. You did that.
No, I certainly did that. That was all me.
So I definitely think, he's that scoring point guard type. And I think, obviously, we see plenty of that in the NBA now. But the Raptors are trying to get him to play point guard. And it's funny enough, Khoury talked about how at halftime, he told Javon Freeman-Liberty to just be like, hey, forget about running plays. Like, if you feel like you can break a guy down, just go ahead and do your thing. Sure. And I think his second half was way better than his first half. I think, he says he's very proudful of his defense. I think he could show a bit more pride. Sure. I think there were times where, whether it was him getting broken down a little bit, or even like plays on the offensive end where he felt like he didn't get a call or whatever, I thought there was just a bit too much complaining. There was one play where he was kind of defending off ball and he was just kind of going at the ref the entire defensive possession. And I was like, that can't happen. And some of that, again, your coach has to hold you accountable too. And so I think those are little things that I would like to see him improve. Again, when he got broken down, he seemed to just let the guy go. And there was no attempt at a recovery or any of that stuff. So I think that's where he has room for improvement for sure. Offensively, I think, he doesn't have that natural point guard mindset of like, hey, how do I get a team in order? How do I orchestrate the offense? That type of thing. And so
he's trigger man.
Yeah. And so I think that's what Khoury recognized too. And so credit to him for recognizing that and just saying, hey man, go out and ball. And so I think that's where his strengths lie. And if you can put him in a situation to do that, great. If not, at the same time, this is the 905. This is an opportunity for development. And so if you can improve, those play calling skills, then you're going to become that much more valuable to a team.
Let's go to Big Ron. I like Ron Harper Jr. He's fun. He's kind of ground bound. He seems to have a pretty good understanding of how basketball is played. 1 of 10 last night, 1 of 6 from deep. Is it ever going to happen for Big Ron? He's been better than that over the course of this season. It should be said. He's averaging nearly 18 a game. Not shooting terribly well from 3, but he's got some stuff to his game. Son of an NBA player, he's got a head on his shoulders. Clearly, is it ever happening for my boy Big Ron, or is he kind of doomed to G League life forever?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with Ron is that he's kind of just okay at a lot of things, right?
Yep.
And that's where when you see all those different flashes, you're like, oh, okay, there's something here. But I think to really crack that NBA level, you have to have that one bankable skill, right?
Yep.
It's like, hey, this thing is going to get you on the court no matter what. And then if the other stuff pops, we've got, now we're cooking. So I think that's what Ron's problem is. But obviously, he's a nice player. He's a capable G League player. Beyond that, I have my doubts. And, I think in general, I will say the refereeing was bad last night. Like some of the calls were just absolutely ridiculous. But I think,
as you might expect in the G League from time to time, it's a development league for the refs too.
It's the G League for everyone. Absolutely. And so I think when you're losing as well and you're 0-7, all of that feels like it's just compounding on you. And so I think there were a lot of guys showing frustration. There was a bit of a melee at the end. Some frustration over your favorite topic, over whether or not to, score another point.
Oh God, I can't believe I tweeted that yesterday. I can't believe anyone cared about me tweeting about the Twitter sucks. What are we doing?
So yeah, there's like G League showcase implications. And so the 905 were not too pleased that the Go-Go were trying to score on the last possession of the game.
I mean, that's just not understanding the rules. If point differential is a thing, play to the damn whistle. Like, why? Like, what is the problem with this? Why can no one seem to get their heads around the concept of, oh, we're not going to pack it in and just like hang it up for the last 3 minutes of a game? Like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Boy.
So yeah, I think Ron Harper was like one of those guys who kind of got caught up with the refs pretty much all night. And there was one point where he was definitely trying to get a tech. I won't repeat some of the things that he said, but yeah, I think with him, yeah, just an okay player, but you need that one skill that pops to really make it to the next level.
I'm growing my acceptance that it's not going to happen for Big Ron, and it's very upsetting. Really, just shouting Big Ron is a really fun thing to do. I don't know. It would be really great if he could just like come in and bury some triples. Markquis Nowell.
Kobe Simmons has some, pop to him. I think watching him, I was like, hey, this is an interesting guard, and I think he's got some nice hesitation moves, nice reads, and I think that he's someone that I'll be kind of paying more attention to as we go down the line here. And obviously he's been hurt. Being hurt has been part of the theme for the 905. Obviously we want to see Markquis Nowell healthy. Shouts to Mohamed Gay, like trying to dunk absolutely everything.
That's what we love about him. He's a gunner, but for dunks, it rocks.
There was one I was like, that was never gonna happen. but shouts to you for trying. Yeah.
5 blocks too. Love Mohamed Gay, just a total maniac player. Again, probably not an NBA guy, but hey, if his one bankable skill is dunks, maybe there's a room that's like the most valuable shot in basketball. Maybe there's an avenue there for our boy Mohamed Gay. Yeah, we can quickly hit on Markquis Nowell. Obviously been injured, hard to get a really read on what he does, but there's no expectation he's going to be a contributor at the NBA level this season, I wouldn't think. They just kind of want him to run the show down there and kind of set the table for everybody, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. He's only got into 4 games so far, which is half the season, 16 points, 8.5 assists. And I think, you're kind of getting from him what you expected. But again, it's been a whack-a-mole roster in terms of injuries, right? Where it's like one guy comes back, another guy gets hurt, and one guy comes back, another guy gets hurt. And that's kind of been the theme of the season so far. So it'll be nice to see everyone healthy for a bit. And I'm sure that'll help relieve Khoury's stress level, at least a little bit. And so I think, yeah, with Markquis, let him pop down there, let him run the offense. And if an opportunity happens to present itself, looking more and more unlikely, obviously you would have seen the case if Malachi Flynn just continued from where he was, last season, but that has not been the case. And so
do we call Malachi Flynn a G League success story now as a guy who's played G League games and is looking like an NBA player? Does he count? Is he part of the pipeline? Is it back? I think
he's a new coach success story.
You're no fun. Man. Maybe they don't need a 905 development pipeline anymore. They got the Darko touch. Everyone will just like hit the Raptors roster and figure out new limits they can.
Yeah, how do we get Darko coaching both teams? Maybe that's what needs to happen.
Is he available? Like, what's the time commitment like? Is the schedule lined up travel wise? We'll see.
Yeah.
Darko riding the bus in between charter flights would be just a little sicko. He's like, I love basketball. What can I say? Love the hoop. We're going to leave it there. We love the big V on this podcast.
I mean, he loves hands. There's more hands available in the 905.
The jazz hands. We'll leave it there. Vivek, we love you, buddy. Thanks for coming on the show and offering your intel on 905 as someone who keeps a pretty close eye on things down there. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, look, I mean, we shouted out Lizette, but my number one spot in Mississauga is Chili Chicken House. Best taco food that you can have. So shouts to them. I'm regular there, so much love to them.
We'll leave it there. We've gone too long. We'll talk to you again after the Nets game Wednesday morning and break it all down for you as the Raptors look to play spoiler in the in-season tournament and hopefully run up the score a whole bunch and make everybody very mad because they're babies who can't grasp, a 4-game change in the different cadence of the NBA. My God. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Thanks for hanging.